Well, now we're really off, and we're going through that part of the Edgware Road, which everybody thinks is the Edgware Road, just faceless shops and flats.
Some of John Betjeman's most effective films have been attempts to draw attention to what he calls the vandalism of planners. This film was full of such moments, and is only one of many gems from the Betjeman archive that we're dipping into in this series.
Improved industrial dwellings, 1884. That's where I'm standing. An improvement on what, I wonder? I think they probably thought it was an improvement on the little old London house. And you've got here the whole history of London in one view. There's the little house with its chimney pots. That's what they were replacing with these improved industrial dwellings, the beginning of flats, the beginning of the end of street life, and over there on the horizon, a still greater inhumanity, the tall towers, and not a tree and no grass anywhere. But the traffic, you know, I've got so to dislike lorries that I bought a little book which tells me the names of them, and it's the one way to get to like them, picking out these names and then looking for them, a Euclid, an Atkinson, a Seddon, endless different types with different names to them of an exciting kind, a dumper Krupp. And all the time, the traffic goes on and on and on. Pretty awful, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people think the whole of the Edgware Road is like this. Thank goodness it isn't quite as squalid as this is. Modern, clean lines, I suppose. That bridge over there with some other modern, clean lines cutting across it. Where I'm standing was the Metropolitan Theatre of Variety. Do you remember everybody famous used to come here? Dan Leno, Max Miller, Mari Lloyd. And look, I mean, it almost makes you like Clanning, doesn't it, for the lack of it there is here. Look, they put a car park on the site. They needn't have taken it down at all.
Oh, you wicked lot. You're the kind of people who get me a bad name. There's a funny thing. Now, this is a funny thing. I went home the other night. There's a funny thing.
Yes, that's the great one. When he came on always, that was it.
You can't help liking him.
You can't help liking him. There'll never be another.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. So here we go with the first song, a little song entitled, Last Night I Was in the Mood, Tonight I Must Get Some Sleep. When the nights get nice and dark, I always go in the park. I only go there for a lark, passing the time away. I hear lovers bill and coo. You'd be surprised if I told you all the naughty things they do while passing the time away.
John Betjeman's love of music hall, and in particular of Max Miller, is shared by his friend, the playwright John Osborne. I played them some moments from the LP Max at the Met.
They both sat down, the grass was damp. He couldn't get up, he got the cramp, passing the time.
I remember it was the favourite record of T.S. Eliot.
Really?
Really?
Absolutely adored hearing it.
Didn't he get banned from the BBC?
Oh, yeah, all the time. That was what made him a sort of hero to my generation. He was banned by sort of stuffy organisations like the BBC.
Yes, he was. That's
and
right.
all those sort of archetypal jokes and things that he was
Yes.
supposed to have been banned for. But I mean, they were all very innocent jokes, really.
Oh, they're lovely. Yeah.
And of course, everyone participated in them, you see, didn't they? I mean, when he used to come on, he'd say, "That lady, she's got her binoculars on me. She thinks I'm a racehorse." I mean, that sort of thing. You know, how's your memory, Gal? And was extraordinary technique.
John, when did you first go to music hall then? Do you remember it as a
I
child?
went at the Chelsea Palace when I was, I suppose, about 14.
Yeah.
It was...
Who took you, your father?
I went on my own. I thought it was rather marvellous to go to somewhere that wasn't a cinema.
Yes.
Yeah. And would they have disapproved if they'd known you'd gone to the musical?
I don't think so, no.
No. There was nothing attached to it at all,
No.
no. So they were very respectable places, weren't they, though? I mean,
Oh,
there was
marvellous.
on a Saturday night, people were a bit drunk and things like that, but I mean, there was never any... I never remember anything happening. It was all very good-humoured. And
Very
clever,
good.
wasn't it? Yes.
And the jokes were so funny. They were very... Everything was... the space between the audience and the performer was the space that counted. You could feel the house. You could feel how people were enjoying themselves
Yeah.
or not.
You mean timing too?
Timing
yes.
was marvellous. That's what Max was so good at,
Yes.
and George Robey and they all. Can you remember the Max used to say, "Oh, you're a filthy lot."
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
You're the kind of people who give me a bad name. That's right. When you look at those, when they did those marvellous monologues, they were terribly serious, some of them. And they're
Oh,
quite
yes.
effective, and almost as good as your poetry, some of them were. They were in the feeling, at any rate, they aroused. Sort of, patriotism, I suppose, and quite often religiosity, really.
Yes.
John, apart from obviously enjoying music hall, would you say that it influenced you in your work?
Oh, yes, entirely.
In what way?
I'd say I cribbed it. I worked for... music hall songs are always in my head, and I suppose I was always waiting for the band to start up and for that those red curtains in front of the brass rail parted, and there was paradise.
Yeah.
Oh, it was wonderful. And the waiting for it. And when different people came in, the different emotion, expectancy in the house.
You had bad acts, too, which was part of the enjoyment, wasn't it? Sort of terrible dog acts. And when I was on...
Trick cyclists.
Trick cyclists, that sort of thing.
Yes.
When I was on tour, when I was a young actor, I always seemed to be with a bad dog act, with the digs, you know.
Yes.
But they were always terribly enjoyable, the bad acts, weren't they? And you always knew that something better was going to come, or it might come, or you could go down to the back and have a drink. And so there was no pressure on one particular person, particularly. I mean, that happened later on when, like with the London Palladium, it all became...
Yes, it became more official. Yes.
Yes.
John, have you ever performed or acted?
Only at school.
And at university, did you?
Yes, in the hours, yes.
Did you like it?
Yes, quite, but...
You never thought of being an actor?
Oh, no. I think I've always been a schoolmaster at, let's say, a solo turn. Really, being a schoolmaster is being a variety artist. You have to hold the audience.
Because in a sense, in John's films, and also when he does his poetry readings, I mean, you have a tremendous sense of timing and rapport with an audience.
He's a star. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's luck. I mean...
Well, I think it's a lot of skill.
It's genius. It's not luck at all.
Oh, well, thank God for it. You do know when it's going all right.
Yeah.
And you can also feel when it isn't. Ooh.
Yeah. It certainly went all right when John Betjeman appeared on Michael Parkinson's show in 1977. To the music of Jim Parker, Betjeman read his poem, A Russell Flint. The poem was inspired by a girl who was once his secretary. He used to call her Freckly Jill.
I could not speak
for amazement at your beauty as you came down the Garrick stair. Grey-green eyes like the turbulent Atlantic and floppy schoolgirl hair. I could see you in a Sussex tea shop, dressed in peasant weave and brogues, turning over as firelight shone on brassware last year's tea-stained vogues. I could see you as a large-eyed student, frowning as you tried to learn, or head flung back, the confident girl prefect, thrillingly kind and stern. I could not speak for amazement at your beauty. Yet when you spoke to me, you were calm and gentle as a rock pool, waiting warm for the sea. Wave on wave I plunged in them to meet you. In wave on wave I drowned. Calm rock pool on the shore of my security. Hold me when the tide goes down.
Did you last write a poem, or to attempt to write a poem in recent weeks?
About 3 days ago, I was trying to do one on Peterborough Cathedral, an unregarded, beautiful building, which has got in it a chapel called St. Sprite, and I imagine that's the Holy Spirit. And it's such a nice name for a chapel. I thought I'd try and do a thing about the Sprite in Peterborough Cathedral. I got the first words out and have now lost them.
You've lost them? Mislaid them?
Mislaid them somewhere.
Can't you remember them?
No.
So what are you going to do?
Hope I'll find them again.
You're not going to sit down and rewrite them, no. What moves you to write poetry nowadays? What stirs you to write poetry?
Places, faces, eyes.
Eyes?
Eyes.
Why?
I think people speak through their eyes, and you can catch somebody's eye, and that's how you talk very often. I think there are antennae.
Yes. You of course, were many things before you were a poet, Sir John. You had some remarkable jobs. You did all the things that James Thurber said he never did before he became a writer. I mean, you were once, you were what, a copywriter for Shell, weren't you?
Yes, indeed.
I mean, how disastrous effect did that have on your spirit, or perhaps it didn't?
I didn't like it very much. I started, though, as a journalist, as you did.
Yes.
And it teaches one to write things simply and not like government department forms.
Yes. It's a very good training. It's a good training in economy, isn't it?
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
Mm. Now, still on the advertising, I mean, advertising slogans and phrases and this sort of thing have always been a part of your poetry, haven't they? You've always stuck them in there. What's the fascination you have?
I think sitting in the underground and seeing things like, whatever her party, the sweet young thing, it's certain she'll vote for a Bravington ring. He was bashful, she was shy, a Bravington ring, and the cloud passed by. And they didn't pay me. It suddenly occurred to me that. And, do they still exist?
Bravingtons?
Yes.
I think they do, yes. I think they do. And was it Virol?
Virol, anemic girls need it, do you know? And iron jelloids, Maserati tea, all those things. I think they're most beautiful names.
Yes, Maserati tea is beautiful, isn't it? Yes, you really couldn't invent that as a writer, could you? Which of all the jobs you did, Sir John, on your way to becoming a poet, did you enjoy most in the sense that it inspired most poetry for you later on?
Undoubtedly, being a schoolmaster.
John Betjeman did not have the same enthusiasm for being a schoolboy.
Doom, shivering doom, inexorable bells to early school, to chapel, school again, compulsory constipation, hurried meals, bulked out with whipped cream walnuts from the town. Doom, shivering doom, clutching a leather grip, containing things for the first night of term, house slippers, sponge bag, pie jams, common prayer, my health certificate, photographs of home. Where were my bike, my play box and my trunk? At first, there was the dread of breaking rules. Betjeman, you know that new boys mustn't show their hair below the peak of college caps. Stand still and have your face slapped. Sorry, Jones. The dread of beatings, dread of being late, and, greatest dread of all, the dread of games.
Look here. In with it. Me too. Come on, Ross. Good ball. Let's go. Yes. Well, get it out. Get it out.
Betjeman's verse autobiography, Summoned by Bells, was published in 1960. In it he describes not only the agonies of boarding school, but his boyhood in London and holidays in Cornwall. An only child whose one wish was to be a poet and to be left alone. At odds with a father in trade who was proud of the family business. Following in father's footsteps was the theme of all my early childhood, wrote Betjeman. Fourth generation John, they look to you. They looked in vain. Betjeman was and is a poet through and through.
In the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost. Amen. And he spake a parable unto them, saying, the ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully.
The center and the mainspring of your lives, the inspiration for your work and sport, the corporate life of this great public school spring from its glorious chapel. Day by day you come to worship in its noble walls, hallowed by half a century of prayer.
Then I will bestow all my fruit.
The old Malburian bishop thundered on, when all I worshipped were the athletes, ranged in the pews opposite. Be pure, he cried, and for a moment stilled the sea of coughs. Do nothing that would make your mother blush if she could see you. When the tempter comes, spurn him, and God will lift you from the mire. Oh, who is God? Oh, tell me, who is God? Perhaps he hides behind the reredos. Give me a God whom I can touch and see.
And is not rich before God.
The bishop was more right than he could know. Safe in the surge of undogmatic hymns, the chapel was the center of my life. The only place where I could be alone.
Well, I find nowadays that I think even more in church because to avoid listening to the New English Bible being read.
Exactly, which is very poor, isn't it?
That's exactly. So I think of something else.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's such an irritant and offensive,
Yes.
I find.
I've discovered a church, Holy Trinity, Sloane Street, which is entirely old-fashioned.
Really?
Bible, yes. And there's hardly anybody there. It's lovely.
Is that the one right at the very end?
Yes.
Opposite the General Trading Company, that one?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Absolutely wonderful. There's an Aussie parson.
Really? That is surprising, isn't it?
It's
Aussie traditionalist.
yes,
1662.
absolutely.
How marvellous.
John, you still go to church despite that irritation, do you?
Yes, I do, but I think I'd probably go more if it weren't for all that, you know, new liturgy and everything.
Oh,
all that
awful.
matiness I
Oh,
can't stand.
it's terrible.
It takes all the privacy away, doesn't it? I
Yes,
mean,
and all the poetry out.
completely. No.
Yes.
It's a sort of manual for customs and excise inspectors, really, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they think that if you get everybody there, it'll be popular. But that's not so. What you want is a thing with very few people there and the most beautiful words.
Yeah.
Because is there any evidence that in fact more people are going to church?
None at
Because
all,
I
no, I
think
don't
the
think
opposite,
so.
wouldn't
Yes,
you?
I should think so. I mean, far more people do go to church than everyone realises. I mean, I don't know what, it's something like 7 times the number of people who go to football matches, which is quite a lot still, isn't it? I mean,
Is that so?
I think
Yeah.
so. It's a surprising statistic, but it's something like that, actually. But, I mean, it's a terrible example of modern funk, what they've done, isn't it, I think, that, with
Yeah, modern funk, yes.
I mean, absolutely, and toadying to what they think is mass opinion or feeling or
Yes.
illiteracy. And after all, literate people have been educated by the St. King James Bible and the Cranmer.
Yes.
Surely, I mean, it's such an incredible, well, it's a very typical modern miscalculation of people's feelings, I think, really. Don't you?
I quite agree. Yes.
And I very first noticed in one evening that marvellous passage in Corinthians, you know, when I was a child, I spake as a child. And I don't know what it is now, but it ends up with something about reflections in windows or something instead of through a glass darkly. Nobody knows what through a glass darkly means, do they? But they know it, what it means. They can't explain it. Because why? It's poetry. You take away the poetry, you take away the meaning, it seems to me.
Absolutely.
They're more illuminating.
John, have you talked to church people about it? I mean, you know a lot of people in the church. What do they feel?
I don't know any that are in favour of withitry.
So where does it come from then? I mean, somebody's pushing it
Well, there's
through.
a large bullying element in the church nowadays, it seems to me, and they're the real activists, and they're committee men, I think, aren't they?
Yes.
There were those people on the synod and all that, and they're a
Yes.
very grey-faced lot of bureaucrats with absolutely no feeling about passion or life in them at all. And they literally do think that if you make it simpler, then it's more accessible, which of course
That's
it is.
right. It's like the town centre at Croydon. A sort of awful square nothing.
What people don't realize who build these big blocks in the city, these huge new white cliffs, is what an awful time the people who have to work in them have in getting to them. The struggle, for instance, that business girls, young business girls, fresh from home, have to go through in order to reach these cliffs. I'm always touched by the sight of people struggling to get to these places, and they live very often in furnished rooms, in large houses, originally built for large families, and now turned into flats. You can see them all over London, particularly in the inner steam railway sort of suburb, And the other day I went back to Hertfordshire. My verse is always about places. And in Hertfordshire, I recollected painful times when I went wrong shooting with my father. And that brought forth these verses. I had forgotten Hertfordshire, the large unwelcome fields of roots, where with my knickerbockered sire I trudged in syndicated shoots, and that unlucky day when I fired by mistake into the ground under a Lionel Edwards sky and felt disapprobation round. The slow drive home by motor car, a heavy Rover landolette through Welwyn Hatfield's Potter's Bar, tweed and cigar smoke, gloom and wet.
In the last year or so, because of Parkinson's disease, Betjeman has needed a wheelchair to get around. He loves Soho and the restaurants. It's also full of film people, and many of his own programs have been edited here. Unlike many writers, Betjeman likes to work in the cutting room, sometimes labouring for hours to find the right words for the pictures in front of him. He's written some of his commentaries in verse, though he's fond of saying that the best films need no words at all. One of his best films, edited here at Document Films, was a very successful marriage of words.
Yes, just bad.
Didn't you have a problem with them, John? Didn't you have a... Wasn't there a difficulty of what to call your future father-in-law or
That's
something?
right, he didn't think, yes. Look here, you can't go on calling me Sir Philip, that's too formal. And you can't very well call me Philip, that's a bit familiar. You better call me Field Marshal. I found that absolutely impossible to do.
What did you call him, John?
Nothing.
John, why do you love Harrow so much, the school?
Because it isn't Eton, and it's so modest and ancient, and it's got such beautiful songs. I suppose the best waltz tune you could possibly have is that one about Dhaka, the bathing place.
I've heard you say that you thought you went there yourself.
Oh, I certainly did. Yes, I'm quite certain I did, in all but fact.
But you sent your son to Eton.
Yes, that was snobbery. I should have sent him, poor boy, to Marlborough, I suppose, or Highgate Junior School. No, I wouldn't wish him there. That was not a happy place.
As a 9-year-old boy at Highgate Junior School, there were further agonies for Betjeman, later recalled in his autobiography.
Up West Hill I walked, red-capped and jacketed to school, a new boy much too early, school at 9, and here was I outside at 8:30. Walking from school is a consummate art. Which routes to follow to avoid the gangs, which paths to find that lead circuitous to leafy squirrel haunts and plopping ponds for dreams of Archibald and Tiger Tim, which hiding place is safe and when it is, what time to leave to dodge the enemy. I only once was trapped. I knew the trap. I heard it in their tones. Walk back with us. I knew they weren't my friends, but that soft voice wheedled me from my route to Cold Swain's Lane. There, in a holly bush, they threw me down, pulled off my shorts and laughed and ran away. And as I struggled up, I saw grey brick, the cemetery railings and the tombs. Betjeman's a German spy. Shoot him down and let him die. Betjeman's a German spy, a German spy, a German spy.
John, you're glad to have been involved in films to the extent that
Oh,
you have been.
delighted, delighted, yes. It's far funnier than any other. You can do it all together, 3 or 4 of you. I like the coffee coming in, too, all the time.
Oh, well, we'll like one now to have some.
You like the trims, too, don't you?
Very
you
much
like the
indeed.
jargon.
I love it. And redheads and brutes. They're very rarely used, aren't
And
they?
creeping sink. Do you know what that
Sinking
is?
up.
What is creeping sink? That's creeping, you know, somebody joining in who's not wanted.
No, we usually cut them out.
Ted, tell John what
Creeping sink is when a shot starts and the sound matches the lip movements of the person, and gradually as the shot progresses it gets further and further apart and more ludicrous.
Yes.
And it's very difficult to cure.
It sounds a bit like a disease.
It does,
it?
there's no known cure.
Oh dear, how lovely. And what is the other thing? Creeping sink. There's another phrase you...
Oh, hair in the gate, you know.
Yes, hair in the gate.
Barn doors.
Oh, they're wonderful. French flags and barn doors. Yes.
Do you know what barn doors are?
I think they're huge bits of tin that are reflecting the light back onto itself. Or is that over
Bad. Not bad for our first
You know what
try.
a hair in the gate is, John?
It's something you can't cure until you have to put in a new bit of film. Is that it?
Yes, you can have the job.
How did you manage to miss it?
I don't know. It really was wonderful.
John, did you used to play a lot of golf?
Yes, in order to keep my end up, because I wasn't athletic in any way at all. And it seemed to me less trouble than a lot of games.
Did you like it?
Not much. It was better than football.
Or did you mainly play on holiday in Cornwall? Or,
Yes. When nobody was looking, I liked doing it best.
You could hit the ball,
Yes.
unlike then.
No, unlike then.
We rehearsed it several times and you hit the ball perfectly well. I mean,
Yes.
there was no intention to miss it at all.
None at all.
But that was an interesting moment when you missed it because we didn't know what to do.
No, we were absolutely up the spout. It was maddening too, because I can feel in my, at the end of the club, what there should have been, a great click and away into the blue, but no.
Did you actually do another take with John hitting it properly, or did you feel that that was the take to use?
We were going to, and then I think it was John McGlashan who said, but you can use that. I mean, you can actually, and that's funnier than any driving off would actually be.
Yes.
It was.
Pure chance, one of those extraordinary things that happens in filming.
Funny.
John, you told me that was Ted's line.
It was Ted's line.
I'm sure it was yours.
No.
I
Oh dear, it does make me laugh. 1952 sounds such a short while ago, doesn't it?
It was your line, Ted. You came up with it as a joke.
The trouble is, the young people who see this film now think it's perfectly serious because they've been born since 1952.
Yes, it's a long time ago. John, do you ever at all regret the amount of time you've spent making programmes that you could have been writing poems instead?
I like to think they are poems, now and then. I think that film is a very good way of supporting the imagination, though not underlining things, just giving a vague suggestion of unease and loneliness. A good film was a thing I liked more than anything else, except Max Miller. I enjoyed, really, I've always enjoyed a musical above everything.
Your idea always was, you used to say it in the cutting room, that a film of this kind should be like a musical. There should be turns and constant variety, and the
Yeah.
feeling that you didn't know what was going to come next.
And you managed to get that in Metroland.
I mean, the use of music in film is terribly important. This is why Ted's so good.
Yes, it is. It's very important. And Ted knows how to pick out bits you want to hear from most unlikely things. People like Vaughan Williams, awfully good. Awfully good.
Not much in this programme of Vaughan Williams.
No. Alas.
But the music's a tremendously important part of that film, isn't it?
Oh, terrific, yes.
I remember one critic saying that John has taken us into deepest Buckinghamshire and left us feeling we'd voyaged up the Orinoco.
Oh, the Orinoco hog, there's a lovely animal.
More time with Betjeman next week at 1:40, and there's another celebration of his work tomorrow night on BBC Two, a thoroughly English affair with Nigel Hawthorne at 9:55.